From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to an episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Another one, Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. And yeah, I'm traveling again. So this has kind of become a thing over the last several months, but nonetheless, we've still got a packed show for all of y'all today. So hope you're ready, tuned in, and ready to go. I flew in very, very late yesterday. In fact, so late that I'm just on a few hours of sleep, and I'd love nothing more than an espresso, but I haven't found one where I'm at. Like, I Googled Starbucks. Y'all know I'm better than Starbucks. I can't do Starbucks coffee, not an espresso at least, right? Like, I'll have to do one of their like 300-gram sugar drinks for the holidays. So with that being said, coffee cup cheers to all of y'all. Whatever you're drinking, put it in the comments. Make me jealous this morning because I'm missing my coffee. And we're going to get right into our stories, including Japanese crypto service shutting down after a May theft of $308 million worth of Bitcoins. Now they're worth more than $429 million, right, have been taken. Now, the company since May, they go by the name of DMM Bitcoin, said they're transferring all customer accounts and assets to another crypto firm called SBI VC Trade, which is a subsidiary of Japanese financial services giant SBI Group. But more important than anything, this situation's been ongoing since May. So these guys launched back in January of 2018. They signed an agreement with SBI VC Trade on November 29th, where all the accounts as well as assets will be transferred over by March of 2025. The two companies are are still settling other facets of the deal, but they kind of, first of all, said, let's take care of the customers, which is the correct approach. Crypto is regulated in Japan, so there are massive implications for the DMM Bitcoin leadership. They had to take out a massive loan to cover the lost Bitcoin. In June, the company secured 55 billion yen in loans, which is about $367 million. The company hasn't provided an update on the situation. They haven't fully explained what happened or who was behind the attack or where the stolen funds were. Officials with Japan's Financial Services Agency conducted their own investigation, saying serious problems were found with the company's system risk management systems in response to the risk of crypto asset leakage. The company never appointed someone to run the risk management system and consolidated risk management, security, and development into the hands of a small group of people. So kind of what you would consider to be the classical types of mistakes that a lot of young kind of groundbreaking organizations make, where they have to make a decision between investing in more engineering in order to have a better product, to addressing risk and security as part of it, thinking that the engineers who can speak a bit of security would be able to address the challenges and kind of the threats that exist from there, where we as practitioners know that not to be the case. And this is a great lesson learned, right? I mean, I often talk about business process and security. I often talk about our need to really kind of transition away from being the people of no and the people who just constantly are trying to talk risk and rather let's talk about the business process. Let's talk about what are our engineers doing? What are our customers doing? How is all of this how are all the gears in the system operating? And then we start to identify the risks that way and mitigate them there, right? And again, this is a maturity that we have to go through as practitioners, as an industry, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But nonetheless, if we go down that path, I believe that the role of the CISO will be far more elevated, and cybersecurity will be far more efficient in helping reduce risk and limit exposure for organizations. And again, here we just see that leadership at DMM Bitcoin really did nothing to address risk management or security. They left a small group of yes people who were just trying to get through their next sprint, likely. And again, we don't know everything here, right? So we don't know everything here. There's not a lot about who went after the attack and so forth. None of that makes sense. So until we know, and hopefully we'll get more information, we'll do that. And again, a lot of incidents around crypto, a lot of eyes on it. And obviously the incoming administration here in the US President Trump and obviously Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have spoken heavily about the need to kind of adopt crypto into the U.S. financial system. And so we're likely going to see regulation come down on U.S. crypto companies, but that's probably going to bring more order to the world around crypto, which the world today kind of regulates crypto in some way or another, but not really totally. And so there's always a leader that's looked there, and Europe's not it. So hopefully President Trump and his administration will be able to do that. We move to Costa Rica, where the Costa Rica State Energy Company is calling on U.S. experts to help deal with a ransomware attack that's paralyzed Recope. Recope is the refiner. I'm not going to say the name in Spanish. I'm sorry. I don't want to embarrass myself on the internet. That will live there forever. The organization said they discovered a ransomware incident on Wednesday morning and began an investigation. They were forced to conduct fuel sales manually in light of the attack, which took down all of their digital systems that they used to facilitate payments. So it appears that the ransomware attacks on their IT systems, not their OT systems. Operations at tanker terminals were extended late into the night on Wednesday and were expanded on Thursday. Recope added it was working with the country's Ministry of Science, Innovation, Technology, and Telecommunications to resolve the situation, but repeatedly sent messages out on social media reiterating the country's population that there were no shortages of fuel in order not to cause panic, very similar to what happened in the U.S. with the Colonial Pipeline attack. So, excuse me. So, fuel unloading on the docks is continuing as usual. Again, this seems to be an IT issue, not an OT issue, because their OT operations are operating just fine. This is a cyber attack on their IT operations, which has limited their billing and their ability to really kind of go about it. They've decided to go about it by paper, which is fine. And again, they're kind of, they're state owned. So the profit and loss here is kind of different. And Costa Rica's got experience in dealing with cyber attacks. If you recall, several years ago, they went through multiple ransomware and re-extortion attempts on the country after a recent election and a new government was put in place. And so Costa Rica should have that muscle memory and that knowledge in order to recover from this one. We move to Blue Yonder, who's making progress towards a full recovery. The Arizona-based supply chain company was the target of a November 21st ransomware attack that impacted services in major companies like Starbucks and Morrison's in the UK. It dealt with operational disruptions and connections with the attack. For Blue Yonder, saying through email that they're making good progress. Many of their impacted customers were online. Starbucks did admit that their systems were impacted, but it was primarily their internal systems where they used Blue Yonder to track the hours of their associates. So they had to do that manually. Morrison's had about 500 stores in the UK, said the outage in the warehouse management system for fresh food and produce. They're saying the situation has significantly improved, although some shortages still remain in some locations. DHL, another Blue Yonder customer, was unimpacted. And actually, upon kind of doing that, I texted someone I know and they answered right away, yes. So apparently the DHL version of Blue Yonder sits on their ecosystem and not Blue Yonder's ecosystem, which is why they were unaffected. Simply the SaaS services of Blue Yonder and people who were using their managed service option had that happen there. Sophos is showing that 45% of retail organizations were hit by a ransomware in 2024, largely because of exploited, vulnerabilities. So again, we'll see that there as well. So Blue Yonder starting to recover as well. Here's an interesting story. South Korean police have arrested a CEO and 5 employees that manufacture satellite receivers. Now, they've manufactured 240,000 satellite receivers that were preloaded or later updated to include DDoS attack functionality at the purchaser's request. While neither company has been named, the two companies have been trading since at least 2017. In November of 2018, the purchasing company made a special request to include DDoS functionality, with the South Korean manufacturer complying. Allegedly, the functionality was needed to counter the attacks of a competing entity. From January 2019 to September 2024, the manufacturer of the devices shipped 240,000 satellite receivers, 98,000 of which had a DDoS modules pre-installed. The rest received the functionality through a later firmware update. The Korean police uncovered the malicious scheme following the reception of intelligence from Interpol, while the action also impacted a suspect who was placed on the international wanted list. An analysis of the equipment revealed that DDoS functionality was being installed during firmware updates. The 6 individuals were arrested in Korea now face charges relating to the violation of the act of promotion of information and communication network utilization and information protection. The court approved the seizure of the company's asset and confiscation of 61 billion Korean wons. That's equivalent to about $4,350,000. The amount the firm estimated to have made by selling the malicious satellite receivers. The company's operators who purchased the equipment remain free. The Korean police seek international cooperation to apprehend them as well. Chinese lidar technology, according to a new report, is posing a national security threat. This is coming on the heels of a lot of different threats emanating from China against U.S. critical infrastructure and U.S. military. All in all here, what they're talking about, and this is kind of, for those who don't know what LiDAR is, it's light detection and ranging. The technology harnesses a laser to build 3D maps of environments it's deployed in. It does a really good job of kind of, mapping out cities and valleys and mountains and so forth. China being obviously a producer of this technology, there's a lot of fear in the U.S. that using Chinese LiDAR technology is actually giving China the data there as well. In September, in May, Rep. Elisa Slotkin of Michigan introduced legislation which would bar the DoD from buying Chinese-made LiDAR. In September, the chairman of the House China Select Committee announced proposed legislation banning the Department of Transportation for buying equipment that contains China-made LiDAR technology. I have a better idea, and this goes to Doge and everyone else in the federal government. If you know people there, send it over to them. I know I will. Ban all sales from China to any government agency or any organization or private company that does work for the federal government. Just ban it altogether. Ban it. You want to use this tech? Buy it from an American company. It's very simple. Buy it from an allied nation. That's an idea. Solves all of those problems. Folks, if you haven't checked out my Substack, jamesazar.substack.com, please go and subscribe. It's absolutely free. You get a detailed write-up of this very podcast, including with action items, all the links to all the stories and everything else. You can also support our work there. Also on Substack. So again, jamesazar.substack.com. Now let's wrap up the show. So a 5-month operation involving law enforcement and Interpol from 40 different countries and region brought in 5,500 financial crime suspects who have been arrested and more than $400 million in virtual assets seized. Operation Hachi 5 spanned from July to November. It targeted 7 types of cyber frauds like voice phishing, romance scams, online sextortion, investment fraud, illegal online gambling, business email compromise fraud, and e-commerce fraud. As part of the operation, authorities from Korea and Beijing dismantled a voice phishing syndicate responsible for $1.1 billion in losses, affecting more than 1,900 victims globally. During the length of the operation, Interpol also issued purple notices related to crypto fraud practices involving stablecoin. Purple notices are used to seek or provide information about operating methods as well as suspected criminals that conceal themselves. Interpol, for their end here, celebrate this one, and as well as they should. Zabbix is warning of a critical severity vulnerability in their open source enterprise networking monitoring solution that could allow attackers to inject arbitrary SQL queries and compromise data. Or, excuse me, or the systems itself. CV 2024-42327 has a CVSS score of 9.9. The security defects exist in the function that's available for any user with a role that has API access. A non-admin user account on the Zabbix front end with the default user role or with any other role that gives API access can exploit this vulnerability. And SQLI exists in the C user class in the add-related objects function. This function is being called from the cuser.get function, which is available for every user who has API access. Russian authorities have sentenced the leader of a criminal group behind the now closed dark web platform Hydra Market to life in prison. His co-conspirators, a whole bunch of them, received anywhere from 8 to 23 years with fines totaling 16 million rubles. So they're now in jail. And Apple filing a patent that goes beyond facial scans in identifying people. The Apple patent, which was approved on November 26, explained how the system could use facial recognition technology, as a first method for identification, and then recognize other body characteristics for additional verification when the facial image, where the facial images captured by the camera are unclear in subsequent settings. The idea is that once a person's face is recognized in a video feed, the newly patented technology would store other information about their body, such as walking gait and clothing. That information would later be available if another video feed lacks enough detail to properly identify a person's face, such as in a situation where the lighting is poor. The technology would then compare the body movement and other data to existing records to determine whether a camera saw a second individual, and that would do that. So an interesting patent by Apple. We'll see how that has impact on everything else. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day, y'all. And most importantly, stay cyber safe. Make sure to follow, subscribe, share, and stay cyber safe. Again, stay cyber safe. Thanks, y'all.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.